Hello and welcome to this Blender Beginners video tutorial. In this video tutorial I'm just going to be explaining and demonstrating the functions that are available to you in edit mode. So now note, I'm not going to explain every individual function because there's heaps. I'm going to explain the most important ones, the ones that will get you started in your modeling hobby, career, whatever you're learning this for. So let's begin. Cool, so I'm going to begin with extruding. Now, extruding, you can extrude any vertex, edge, or face. Extruding is when you extend something, make something thicker, make something thinner, make it longer. It's basically, I'll actually demonstrate it, and then you'll know what it does. So, I'm going to first extrude a face. So let's select the face here and press E to extrude, or you can go here and press extrude region. You get extrude individual. I will cover that just now. So press E to extrude, and then it will extrude along the direction that the face that you extruded is facing. So this face at the top is facing up, so it will extrude along the Z axis. We can also constrain it along the X and the Y axes using the Z, X, and Y letter keys on our keyboard. You can right click to cancel an extrusion in case you want to maybe just drag it and do custom and you want to change it a bit before you move it. So you can extrude faces. You can also extrude edges. Select two edges and we'll extrude them. Now note that because there's not a face facing in any way, because we don't have a face selected, we can move them anywhere. But we can still constrain them along the Z, X, or Y axes. Let's drag it up along the Z axis. You can see we've now extruded two edges while not extruding those and not extruding that. We can also extrude vertices. Select a vertex and go extrude it. Because there's no face once again, we can drag it anywhere we want. We can constrain it though along the Z, X, or Y axes. That was extrude region. We also get extrude individual. Let's start with faces. Extruding individually is when you actually extrude every face. So, for example, I'm going to subdivide. I'll explain subdivide just now. I will subdivide this plane. Now you can see there's many faces on one plane. If I were to extrude them as a region, you'll see that they still all make up one big face. But if I were to extrude them individually and I drag them up, you'll see that all of them are separate faces. This is useful for when you want to go and, for example, select all these top faces and then you want to go and scale them all out, but then scale the middle ones in or something. This is where it's useful. This does not work with edges, unfortunately, but it does work with vertices. Let's go and select the outside vertices of the square or plane. We'll now press extrude. We'll now go to extrude individual and we'll drag it up. You'll see that all the vertices are separated from each other. None of them are joined, which is useful for when we want to join them to another shape up above. As you can see, extruding is a powerful tool that can be used to modify your object heavily. It can be used to turn a primitive into a rough shape of what you want, or it can be used to add fine details. I will now cover subdividing. Subdividing is when you increase the number of faces from a single face. So, for example, I'm going to go to face select mode and select this face. I'll go subdivide. You will see that one face has turned into 4 separate faces. By separate, I mean that they're not joined into one face anymore. That they're not all one face anymore, but 4 faces, but they are still linked together, as you can see. We can call the subdivide function over and over again, and it will still subdivide each individual square that's into 4. You might have noticed that when we subdivided, when we clicked subdivide, there were a number of different properties. The number of cuts controls how many cuts you want the subdivide to do. So as you can see, as we increase the number of cuts in the plane increases. Note that this can only go up to 10. We'll bring it down to 1 again. Smoothness I'll demonstrate on a cube just now. Fractal. Fractal can be used with high number of cuts. It can be used to displace the surface a bit after we've subdivided it. This is especially useful for when making things like cliffs, etc. We can also, if you don't like that vertex being up, we can just go along a random seed until we get that vertex down. I promised to show you how to subdivide a cube, that smoothness. Let's go and subdivide this cube. When we subdivide it, let's set the fractal to 0, and let's change the number of cuts to 5. We can now call the smoothness, and we can just increase the smoothness, and you'll see that it actually smooths out the object, creating a sphere out of the cube. As you can see, subdivision can increase the poly count of your model with minimal effort. This is especially useful for when you want to refine details. Okay, so let's cover beveling. Here's a shape that I've simply made by taking a cube and selecting all the faces and then extruding them individually. Let's select all by pressing A. Let's go and press Ctrl B. This will bevel the edges. As you can see, we're smoothing the shape as we go. By scrolling up, we can increase the number of segments, and by scrolling down, we can decrease the number of segments. It can be very fine. This adds a lot of realism to your model, as nothing in the world is ever sharp as that. We can also go and then also bevel these vertices. So we can go Ctrl Shift B, and now it will only bevel the vertices. And now we can go and extend the number of segments it must use, and you can see it's beveled the vertices. Pretty useful, eh? Cool. And that is beveling. It's so simple. I mean, you can bevel individual faces, like so, increase the segments, or you can go and bevel the vertices, like so, by increasing the segments. Bevel is a really powerful tool that can add realism to your model very quickly. Now I'm going to demonstrate the loop cut and slide function. This function allows us to cut edges into a plane or a surface. So to initiate it, we can either go here in the mesh tools and select loop cut and slide, or as the shortcut says, Control R, and we can use Control R. Now you won't see anything. To use it, you must hover over one of the edges. If we hover over this edge, it's going to create an edge perpendicular to the edge you're hovering over, as you can see. So let's hover over this edge. Now say we want 3 cuts in it. To increase the number of cuts, we scroll up. To decrease the number of cuts, we scroll down. I'm going to go with 3. Left click to accept. You will now see that you can slide these. To slide these you can slide these along the y-axis. If you don't want to slide them, just right click. You can see that we have cuts. It's almost like subdividing, except that we control it, and we have more control over where it divides it. We can also go and add a few that way then. This allows us to add detail into our models where we want detail without adding unnecessary detail in other places. Earlier when we learned how to manipulate objects in object mode, I said that edit mode had more advanced controls. I'm going to show you those controls now. So we can slide. One of the advanced controls is sliding. So say I want to move this vertex, but I want to move it in line with that on this edge. To do this, I'll simply press G, and now it's free, okay? Now we can press Y, but what if that vertex over there was up there, and there was a slope here? Y wouldn't work. Just press G again, and it will allow you to snap the vertex along the edges. This is really powerful. We can do exactly the same thing with edges. Just like the vertex, let's go select the edge. Now press G. We can once again move it along the y-axis, but once again we have that issue of it being up there. So what we can do is just press G again, and we can snap it along the two adjacent edges. As you can see, this makes the manipulator instantly much more powerful. We can use the knife tool to cut into a shape in Blender. By using a reference image in the background, we can cut the reference image into the shape. Let's try it out. You can either select the knife here or use the K tool. Now you'll see there's a lot of shortcuts here at the bottom. We can use left mouse button. The left mouse button will define where we want, so we'll click where we want to go. But now, an important one is Z, which allows us to cut through an object to the other side. So let's press Z. C allows us to constrain ourselves along angles. So, as we're cutting, it will, well, I'll show you now. It will allow us to actually constrain along the angles like 0, 45 degrees. So I had C, you can see I can constrain it along certain angles, like that. Okay, but I'm going to switch that off because I don't want it. So we'll just go on until it snaps against this edge, and then I'm going to go and snap it here. And then let's go back like that. Okay, now because when we're done, we can just press enter. Now it is a buggy tool, unfortunately, but because I cut through it, you can see it's actually almost made two separate meshes. And I can go and select that mesh and use P, which is separate, to separate the selection. Now you see we have two separate meshes. So we have two separate objects in object mode that we want to join together to edit in edit mode together. We can simply go and select the two objects and press Ctrl J to join them. This will turn them into one object, which we can then edit together in edit mode. In edit mode, we can use the remove doubles to remove overlapping vertices. So, for example, we just joined these two shapes. There's a vertex there and another vertex there on top of each other. Now, this is not going to work, as when we drag this, it's going to drag it separate. It's going to drag this shape and not the whole line. To fix this, we'll go and select all with A, and then go W, remove doubles. As you can see, we've removed 4 vertices. It claims it's removed 4 vertices. And now if we were to go and drag this, it will drag this vertex along. Let's say that we have an object and we've been extruding it, and now we want it to all end at one point. Now we could, of course, I'm sure you thought, go S for scale 0, and then just go remove doubles by going W, remove doubles, which works. But there's an easier solution. By simply selecting the vertices that you want to merge, you can simply press Alt M to merge. You can select at center. If you select a cursor, it will merge it at that point. We now see that we've managed to merge all those vertices into one vertex much quicker. We have a face cut around this cube. Now I want this face to be indented into the cube. Now we can go and simply select all 4 sides and then just go and extrude it, scale it down along the Z and along the X. By the way, a shortcut to prevent scaling on the Y but on the Z and X axes, you can simply hold down Shift and then press the axes that you don't want to scale along. So in this case it's Y. So we go Shift Y, and you can see that we scale along all the other axes. So now you may just say, well, why don't we do that? Well, you can, but once again there's a faster solution. It's called Inset. Simply press I, or you can access it in the Specials menu with W, and you can see here Inset Faces. By pressing I, as you can see, edit mode has a lot of functions. We just covered the most basic and important ones. There are lots, but most professionals use only up to 10 usually. They usually combine these tools to create amazing results.